My ex-wife spread rumors I was crazy. But the therapist believed me. I stared at the court-appointed evaluator's report for the third time, my hands shaking as I read the words that felt like a death sentence. Mr. David Chin exhibits signs of paranoid ideation and emotional instability. Supervised visitation recommended until further psychological evaluation completed. The coffee shop around me buzzed with normal people living normal lives while mine crumbled into pieces. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my lawyer, Margaret, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Not yet. Paranoid ideation. That's what Dr. Patricia Holbrook had written after spending exactly 47 minutes with me last Tuesday. 47 minutes to destroy everything I'd been fighting for over the past 8 months since Sarah filed for divorce. The worst part? I knew exactly how we'd gotten here. It started small, like it always does with Sarah. A concerned phone call to my mother 3 weeks after I moved out. I'm just worried about David's mental state, Mrs. Chen. He's been saying some really strange things about me. I think the stress of the divorce might be getting to him. Then came the carefully orchestrated scene at Emma's soccer practice where Sarah pulled aside 2 other parents, tears in her eyes, explaining how I'd been acting erratic and she was scared for the children's safety. Emma is 7. Our son Jake just turned 5 last month, a birthday party I wasn't invited to because Sarah told my own sister that I'd been making threatening comments and she couldn't risk having me there with all those children present. Threatening comments. Me. The guy who apologizes to furniture when I bump into it. By the time I realized what was happening, Sarah's narrative had taken root like poison ivy. My brother Michael stopped returning my calls. My best friend from college, Tom, who'd been my groomsman, sent me a text suggesting I get help after Sarah apparently reached out to him expressing concern about my behavior. The most devastating blow came 2 months ago when I arrived to pick up the kids for my court-ordered weekend visitation. Emma ran to me like always, but Jake hung back, clutching Sarah's leg. Daddy seems angry all the time now, he whispered to his mother, loud enough for me to hear. Like you said. Like you said. Those 3 words hit me harder than any legal document. Sarah had been coaching them. My own 5-year-old son was afraid of me because his mother had convinced him I was someone to fear. I tried explaining this to Dr. Holbrook during our evaluation session. I brought documentation, text messages, emails, even a recording of Sarah screaming at me over the phone while simultaneously sending me messages about how concerned she was about my mental health. But the more evidence I presented, the more convinced she became that I was obsessed with proving my ex-wife wrong. This level of documentation and focus on your ex-wife's behavior is concerning, Mr. Chin, she'd said, making notes. It suggests an unhealthy fixation. An unhealthy fixation. On proving I wasn't crazy, I was being made to look crazy. That was a week ago. Today, I'm sitting in this coffee shop with a court report that could cost me my children forever, and I've got one last chance. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, agreed to see me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Margaret finally caught up to me via text, David, we can appeal this. But you need to call me back. Now. I finished my coffee and stood up. One more shot at the truth. One more chance to save my kids from their mother's web of lies. Dr. Rebecca Martinez's office felt different from the sterile institutional space where Dr. Holbrook had dissected my life in 47 minutes. Warm lighting, actual books on the shelves instead of certificates, and a box of tissues that didn't look like it was placed there as a trap. Tell me about your marriage, David, Dr. Martinez said, settling into her chair with a notepad. Not the divorce. The marriage. For the first time in months, someone was asking about the years before everything exploded. I found myself talking about things I'd buried, how Sarah would cancel plans with my friends at the last minute, claiming I'd forgotten about family obligations I'd never agreed to. How she'd rearranged conversations we'd had, insisting I'd said things I knew I hadn't. She had this way of making me question myself, I said, surprised by how easily the words came. I'd remember a conversation one way, and she'd look at me like I was losing my mind, then explain what really happened with this patient, concerned voice. Dr. Martinez nodded. Can you give me a specific example? Last Christmas. Before things got really bad. I told her I wanted to take the kids to see my parents in Sacramento for New Year's. We talked about it in November, made plans. But when December came, she insisted I'd never mentioned it. Said I was being spontaneous and inconsiderate, that she'd already promised her sister we'd babysit her kids that weekend. I rubbed my temples, remembering the frustration. When I showed her the text thread where we discussed Sacramento, she said I was keeping receipts like a crazy person and that normal husbands don't document every conversation with their wives. How did that make you feel? Like maybe I was keeping receipts like a crazy person. The admission hung in the air. She was right, normal people don't screenshot conversations with their spouses. But I'd started doing it because I felt like I was going insane. Every discussion became this exercise in me trying to prove what had actually been said. Dr. Martinez made a note. David, I want to ask you about your children. When you spend time with them now, how do they interact with you? It's getting worse. The words felt like swallowing glass. Emma still hugs me, but she asks weird questions. Last weekend she wanted to know why I hurt Mommy's feelings so much. When I asked what she meant, she said Mommy cries every night after I bring them home. And Jake? Jake barely talks to me anymore. 3 months ago, he was my shadow. Now he flinches when I raise my voice even slightly. Last Sunday, I asked him to put his shoes on because we were running late for the park, and he started crying. Said he was sorry for making me mad, that he'd be good. I had to stop talking for a moment. The memory of my 5-year-old son apologizing for making me angry when I wasn't even upset was too much. Sarah's been telling them things, I continued. I know it sounds paranoid, hell, Dr. Holbrook wrote paranoid ideation in big letters, but Emma asked me last month why I don't love them anymore. She's 7 years old. Where would she get that idea unless someone planted it? Dr. Martinez set down her pen and looked at me directly. David, what you're describing isn't paranoid ideation. It's a documented pattern of psychological manipulation called parental alienation, often combined with gaslighting tactics. For the first time in 8 months, someone was telling me I wasn't crazy. Someone believed me. The relief of Dr. Martinez's words lasted exactly until I got home and found the email from Margaret waiting in my inbox. Subject line, urgent, new motion filed. David, call me immediately. Sarah's attorney filed an emergency motion this morning requesting supervised visitation be suspended entirely. They're claiming you violated the no-contact order. Court hearing scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. We have 72 hours to respond. My blood went cold. No-contact order. I'd followed every rule to the letter. I picked up the kids exactly when the court specified, returned them on time, communicated only through the parenting app the judge mandated. My phone rang. Margaret. What no-contact violation? I said instead of hello. Sarah claims you've been driving past her house multiple times over the past 2 weeks. She has photos of your Honda Civic on Maple Street with timestamps. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, signed an affidavit saying she witnessed you parked outside the house for extended periods. I sank into my kitchen chair. Margaret, I live 6 blocks away. Maple Street is the main route to literally everywhere, the grocery store, the kids' school, the post office. The photos show your car parked, David. Not driving through. Parked. One timestamp shows 8:47 p.m. last Tuesday. Another shows 3:15 p.m. on Saturday. I pulled up my calendar app, scrolling frantically. Last Tuesday at 8:47, I was at Home Depot buying a toilet flapper. I have the receipt. And Saturday at 3:15. I checked my credit card app. I was getting gas at the Shell station on Maple. It's 2 blocks from Sarah's house. Can you prove that? I can prove I bought gas at 3:18 p.m. The Shell station is the one right next to the Starbucks where Emma likes to get hot chocolate. I always fill up there before taking the kids out. The pieces started falling into place. Margaret, she's been watching me. Waiting for me to be anywhere near that street so she could document it as stalking behavior. There's more. Margaret's voice got quieter. Jake told the court-appointed child advocate that you asked him to keep secrets from Mommy during your last visit. What secrets? But even as I asked, I remembered. Last Sunday, Jake spilled ice cream on his shirt at the park. I gave him my hoodie and told him we didn't need to mention the spill to Mommy because it wasn't a big deal. The shirt was fine after I rinsed it out in the bathroom. David, you cannot ask the children to keep anything from their mother right now. Even something innocent like a spilled ice cream becomes evidence that you're trying to manipulate them. I stared at my empty kitchen, realizing how completely trapped I was. Drive down the main street in my own neighborhood. Stalking. Help my son clean up a minor accident without making it into drama. Manipulation. Defend myself against false accusations. Paranoid ideation. There's something else, Margaret continued. Sarah's attorney is requesting a psychological evaluation from Dr. Harrison Mitchell. He's known for being very conservative in his recommendations regarding father's rights. What about Dr. Martinez? She believes me, Margaret. She understands what Sarah's doing. We can submit her report, but David, you've only had 1 session. Dr. Holbrook spent 47 minutes with you and recommended supervised visits. Sarah's been seeing Dr. Amanda Foster for individual therapy to process the trauma of your marriage for 4 months. Guess who's writing a letter supporting Sarah's claims about your mental instability? The trap was perfect. Sarah's therapist, who'd only heard her version of events for months, would testify that I was dangerous. Meanwhile, any therapist I found who actually recognized the truth would be dismissed as biased because I'd sought them out to counter the narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Daddy, it's Emma. Mommy let me use her phone. Why did you make Jake cry last week? Mommy says you're sick and might not be able to see us anymore. 72 hours until the hearing that could cost me my children forever. And Sarah was already turning Emma into her messenger. I stared at the text from Emma's phone until the words blurred together. My 7-year-old daughter was being used as a weapon, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it without looking like the unstable parent Sarah was painting me to be. I called Dr. Martinez's after-hours line, desperate. David, I can hear the panic in your voice, she said when she called back 20 minutes later. Tell me what's happening. I read her the text, my voice cracking on the word, sick. This is textbook parental alienation, Dr. Martinez said firmly. Sarah is using Emma as a conduit to communicate with you, which violates the court order requiring communication through the parenting app. More importantly, she's forcing your daughter to deliver emotionally charged messages that put Emma in the middle of adult conflict. But how do I prove that? If I screenshot this text, I look like I'm keeping receipts like a crazy person again. If I don't document it, it's my word against Sarah's. Document everything, David. And I want to see you tomorrow morning before your regular appointment. Can you come in at 7 a.m.? Yes, but Dr. Martinez, what if the judge doesn't listen? Sarah's therapist has been building a case against me for months. I've got 3 days and 1 session with you. David, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen this pattern dozens of times, and I know how to document it properly. But I need you to be completely honest with me about everything, even the things that might make you look bad. After we hung up, I spent the night going through every interaction I'd had with Sarah since the separation. Every text, every email, every awkward exchange during kid handoffs. The pattern was so clear now that I wondered how I'd missed it for so long. The next morning at 7 a.m., Dr. Martinez's office felt like a war room. She had my files spread across her desk along with printed articles about parental alienation and psychological manipulation. I've been researching your case, she said. I pulled Dr. Holbrook's evaluation report. David, she made a critical error in her assessment. She slid a highlighted section across the desk. Look at this. She wrote, subject presents with extensive documentation of ex-wife's behavior, suggesting obsessive tendencies. But then 3 paragraphs later, subject unable to provide concrete examples when pressed for specifics. I read it twice. I don't understand. These 2 observations contradict each other. You can't simultaneously be obsessively documenting everything and unable to provide specific examples. This suggests Dr. Holbrook had already formed her opinion before the session and was fitting the evidence to match her conclusion. Dr. Martinez pulled out another document. I also contacted Dr. Amanda Foster's office yesterday. My stomach dropped. Sarah's therapist. What did you tell them? I told them I was conducting a family evaluation and needed to coordinate care. Here's what's interesting. Dr. Foster has never requested your medical records, never asked to speak with you, and never recommended couples counseling or family therapy before supporting Sarah's claims about your mental health. She leaned forward. David, any competent therapist evaluating claims of spousal mental illness would want to speak with both parties or at minimum review independent medical records. The fact that Dr. Foster is making recommendations about your fitness as a parent without ever attempting to assess you directly is a serious ethical problem. Can we use that in court? Absolutely. But there's something else I discovered. Dr. Martinez opened her laptop. I looked up Dr. Harrison Mitchell, the evaluator Sarah's attorney wants to use. He's been censured twice by the State Board for gender bias in custody evaluations. His license was temporarily suspended in 2019. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Margaret needs to know about this immediately, Dr. Martinez continued. We're not just defending against false accusations anymore, David. We're building a case that exposes systematic manipulation of the legal system. My phone buzzed. Another text from Emma's number. Daddy, are you going to leave us like Uncle Michael left Aunt Jenny? Sarah wasn't just alienating my children. She was teaching them to fear abandonment while simultaneously trying to ensure I be forced to abandon them. The gloves were coming off. I called Margaret immediately after leaving Dr. Martinez's office, my hands still shaking from rage over Sarah's latest text manipulation. But when she answered, her voice carried a tension that made my stomach drop. David, we have a problem. I just got off the phone with the court clerk. Judge Morrison had to recuse himself from your case. What? Why? Conflict of interest. Apparently Sarah's new boyfriend, Derek Hoffman, works at the same law firm that represented Judge Morrison's son in a DUI case last year. The reassignment goes to Judge Catherine Walsh. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Judge Walsh had a reputation in family court. She was known for what attorneys diplomatically called maternal preference in custody decisions. Margaret and I had specifically requested Judge Morrison because of his track record of 50-50 custody splits. Margaret, this can't be a coincidence. How would Sarah even know about Judge Morrison's connection to Derek's firm? That's what worries me. Derek Hoffman isn't just some random boyfriend, David. I did some digging after you mentioned him last week. He's a paralegal at Brennan & Associates, the same firm that represented 3 high-profile fathers who lost custody battles in Judge Walsh's court over the past 2 years. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. He's feeding Sarah information about how the system works. Court procedures, judge preferences, legal strategies. It gets worse. I found out Derek was married until 6 months ago. His ex-wife filed a restraining order against him in March, claiming harassment and stalking behavior. The order was dropped when she suddenly moved to Portland with their daughter. I pulled over to the side of the road, my vision blurring with anger. Sarah's boyfriend has a history of stalking, but I'm the dangerous one who can't see his kids unsupervised. David, there's something else. I spoke with Dr. Martinez about testifying on Thursday, but Sarah's attorney filed a motion to exclude her testimony. They're claiming bias because you sought her out specifically to counter Dr. Holbrook's evaluation. But that's exactly what you told me to do, find a therapist who specializes in family dynamics. I know. The legal system has a catch-22 when it comes to psychological evaluations. If you don't seek help, you're non-compliant. If you do seek help and the therapist supports you, they're biased. If the court-appointed evaluator doesn't believe you, their word is gospel. I sat in my car outside the Starbucks where Emma and I used to get hot chocolate every Saturday morning, watching normal families through the window. A dad was helping his daughter with homework while she sipped whipped cream off her drink. 6 months ago, that was me. What about Derek's background? The restraining order. Inadmissible unless it directly relates to the children's safety. And since Sarah's claiming you're the dangerous one, Derek's history becomes irrelevant. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma's number. Daddy, Derek says you don't pay enough money to take care of us. Is that why you live in a small apartment? This time, I screenshot it immediately. Sarah had made a critical error. Derek was now directly involved in the parental alienation, and this text proved it. A 7-year-old doesn't understand child support payments or make judgments about apartment sizes unless an adult is coaching her. Margaret, I just got another text from Emma. But this time Sarah slipped up. Derek's voice is all over it. Send it to me right now. And David? I think it's time we stopped playing defense. I'm filing a countermotion this afternoon requesting an emergency investigation into Sarah's violation of the communication order and potential coaching of the children. Will Judge Walsh even consider it? She has to. Because I'm also requesting that Derek Hoffman be prohibited from any contact with your children until his background can be properly evaluated. For the first time in this nightmare, we weren't just responding to Sarah's attacks. We were going on the offensive. But Sarah was already 3 moves ahead. I was walking into my apartment with takeout from the Thai place when my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez flagged me down from her doorway. She had that uncomfortable look people get when they know something you don't want to hear. David, honey, I probably shouldn't say anything, but there was a woman here earlier asking questions about you. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? She said she was doing a background check for family court. Asked about noise complaints, whether you brought women over, if you seemed stable. Mrs. Rodriguez wrung her hands. She had official-looking paperwork, so I thought it was legitimate. But after she left, something felt wrong about it. What did she look like? Blonde, maybe 40. Professional dress. She knew your name, knew about the divorce. Said she was a social worker with Child Protective Services. I pulled up Sarah's Instagram on my phone and showed Mrs. Rodriguez the most recent photo, Sarah at some wine bar with Derek last weekend. Oh no. Mrs. Rodriguez's face went pale. That's her. David, I'm so sorry. I told her you were quiet, kept to yourself, that I'd never seen anything concerning. But if she wasn't legitimate. Sarah had impersonated a CPS worker to gather information from my neighbors. The audacity was breathtaking, but more importantly, it was illegal. Finally, she crossed a line that even Judge Walsh couldn't ignore. I called Margaret immediately. She did what? Margaret's voice shot up an octave. Impersonated a social worker. Mrs. Rodriguez will testify to it. We've got her on fraud, impersonation of a government official, harassment. David, slow down. This is huge, but we need to be smart about how we handle it. First, you need to file a police report tonight. Not tomorrow, tonight. Second, I need Mrs. Rodriguez to write down everything she remembers while it's fresh. I was finally making progress when my phone rang. Emma's number again, but this time it wasn't a text. Daddy? Emma's small voice was thick with tears. Emma, sweetheart, what's wrong? I'm not supposed to call you. Mommy took her phone to the bathroom and Daddy, I don't like Derek. He's mean to Mommy when he thinks we can't hear. My heart pounded. What do you mean, honey? He yells at her about you. Says she's being too nice, that she should make sure you never get us back. And Daddy, he told Jake that you don't want us anymore, that's why you moved to the small apartment. Emma, listen to me very carefully. None of that is true. I love you and Jake more than anything in the world. I moved to the apartment so I could be close to you, and I'm fighting every day to spend more time with you both. Really? Her voice was so small, so hopeful. Really? Emma, I need you to know that you never have to keep secrets from me, okay? If Derek or anyone says things that make you uncomfortable. Emma. Emma. Sarah's voice shrieked in the background. What are you doing with my phone? The line went dead. I stared at my phone, knowing I'd just received the most important 3 minutes of evidence in this entire case, and also knowing I'd probably lost the chance to talk to my daughter privately for months. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message through the parenting app. David, Emma stole my phone and called you without permission. This is exactly the kind of manipulative behavior she's learned from watching you. Derek witnessed the entire incident and will be providing a statement about your inappropriate coaching of our daughter during the unauthorized call. They were going to twist Emma's cry for help into evidence of my manipulation. But this time, I wasn't backing down. This time, I had Mrs. Rodriguez, Dr. Martinez, and Derek's own words through Emma proving his direct involvement in parental alienation. Sarah had finally made the mistake I'd been waiting for. She'd gotten greedy. The police report took 3 hours to file. Officer Janet Mills listened to my account of Sarah's impersonation with the kind of professional skepticism I'd grown accustomed to, but Mrs. Rodriguez's detailed statement and willingness to testify seemed to shift something in her expression. Mr. Chen, I have to ask, is there any possibility this woman was legitimately from CPS and you're mistaken about her identity? I showed her the Instagram photo again. Officer Mills, Sarah Elizabeth Chen is my ex-wife. She has no affiliation with any social services agency. She's a marketing coordinator at Pacific Northwest Insurance. Officer Mills made notes. We'll investigate, but I want to be clear, false impersonation of a government official is a felony. If your ex-wife did this, she's looking at potential jail time. All I want is the truth documented, I said, though privately I wondered if Sarah finally facing real consequences might be exactly what this situation needed. I was walking to my car when Margaret called with news that made my blood run cold. David, Sarah's attorney just filed an amended motion. They're now claiming Emma's phone call to you last night was a setup, that you coached her to call and fed her the lines about Derek being mean to Sarah. That's insane, Margaret. Emma called from Sarah's bathroom while hiding. How could I have orchestrated that? It gets worse. They're saying Emma's behavior, stealing phones, calling you secretly, lying about Derek, proves that your influence on her is becoming destructive. They want all contact suspended until you complete a 6-month intensive psychological treatment program. I leaned against my Honda, feeling the walls closing in again. 6 months. Margaret, in 6 months Emma will be 8 and Jake will be 6. They'll forget our relationship entirely. There's something else. Derek Hoffman filed a supplemental affidavit this morning. He claims that during Emma's call, he heard you telling her to remember what we talked about and coaching her to say negative things about him. I never said anything like that. Derek couldn't have heard our conversation anyway. Emma said he wasn't in the room. David, Derek's claiming he was standing right outside the bathroom door because he was concerned about Emma's secretive behavior. His statement says he heard the entire conversation through the door. The setup was masterful. Sarah creates a situation where Emma feels compelled to reach out to me in secret, then Derek positions himself to overhear and mischaracterize everything I say. Emma's genuine distress becomes evidence of my manipulation. What about the CPS impersonation? Doesn't that prove Sarah's willing to break the law? We're still building that case. But David, I need to prepare you for the possibility that Judge Walsh might not see it as relevant to the custody issue. The court's primary concern is going to be what's best for the children right now, and Emma calling you secretly while upset about Derek could be spun as evidence that contact with you is making her act out. I drove home in silence, my mind racing through every interaction I'd had with Emma and Jake over the past months. How many of their questions had been setups? How many times had Derek been listening just outside the room, waiting for me to say something that could be taken out of context? My phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Martinez. David, I've been reviewing the timeline of events. Can you meet me tonight at 7 p.m.? I think there's something important we missed. Her office felt different in the evening, quieter, more intimate. Dr. Martinez had spread out a timeline across her desk, marking every major incident from the past 6 months. David, look at this pattern. Every escalation in Sarah's accusations coincides perfectly with your legal victories or positive developments. She pointed to the timeline. Dr. Holbrook's negative evaluation came 3 days after you successfully got your weekend visitation restored. The emergency motion for supervised visits happened the week after you presented evidence of Sarah's text coaching. And now this amended motion filed the day after you documented her impersonating a CPS worker. The pattern was undeniable. She's not just reacting defensively. She's escalating strategically. Exactly. And David, I think Thursday's hearing isn't about custody at all anymore. I think Sarah's goal is to push you into doing something desperate, something that would justify every accusation she's made about your mental state. The realization hit like ice water. Sarah wasn't trying to win custody. She was trying to make me snap. The realization that Sarah was deliberately trying to push me to a breaking point kept me awake all night. Every interaction, every escalation, every perfectly timed accusation, it was all designed to make me lose control and prove her right about my instability. At 6:23 a.m., my phone rang. Margaret's name on the screen at this hour could only mean bad news. David, emergency situation. Sarah filed a police report at 11:47 p.m. last night claiming you violated the restraining order by driving past her house repeatedly between 9 and 10 p.m. I bolted upright in bed. I was at Dr. Martinez's office until 8:15, then went straight to Safeway for groceries. I have the receipt timestamped at 8:43 p.m. Can you prove you were at Safeway the whole time? I ran into my old coworker Janet in the frozen food section. We talked for maybe 20 minutes about her new baby. She'd remember. I was already pulling up my bank app. Margaret, my debit card shows the transaction at 8:43, but I didn't leave the store until after 9:15. There should be security cameras. Get to that Safeway when it opens and talk to a manager about the footage. Sarah's report claims Mrs. Patterson saw your Honda Civic parked across from the house at 9:23 p.m. and again at 9:47 p.m. She took photos. My stomach dropped. The same Mrs. Patterson who signed the affidavit about me stalking before. The same one. David, there's something else. Derek Hoffman was apparently with Sarah when she filed this report. He provided a supplemental statement claiming he saw you drive past slowly at 9:31 p.m. and that you made threatening gestures toward the house. I started pacing my tiny apartment. This is insane, Margaret. Why would I violate a restraining order the night before the most important hearing of my life? It makes no sense. That's exactly what Sarah's counting on. She's betting that Judge Walsh will see this as escalating behavior, that you're becoming more desperate and therefore more dangerous. The trap was perfect. If I couldn't prove my whereabouts with absolute certainty, the court would assume I was lying. And Sarah had made sure her witnesses were ready with specific times and details that would be hard to refute. Margaret, what if this isn't about the restraining order violation? What if Sarah needed to file something last night to delay Thursday's hearing? What do you mean? Think about it. We were about to present evidence of her CPS impersonation, Derek's criminal history, the parental alienation documentation from Dr. Martinez. Sarah needed a reset button. There was silence on Margaret's end as she processed this. David, you might be right. Emergency restraining order violations automatically trigger a 48-hour cooling-off period review. Judge Walsh could postpone the custody hearing to address the criminal allegations first. Which gives Sarah more time to coach the kids, manufacture more evidence, maybe even relocate if things get too hot. I'm calling the court clerk as soon as they open. But David, you need to get that security footage and find Janet. If we can prove you were nowhere near Maple Street last night, we don't just defend against this accusation, we prove Sarah filed a false police report. After Margaret hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the timeline Dr. Martinez had given me. Every escalation mapped out in black ink, showing the calculated precision of Sarah's psychological warfare. But as I studied the dates, something else became clear. Sarah was running out of moves. The CPS impersonation was sloppy, desperate. Last night's restraining order violation was even sloppier, too many specific details, too convenient timing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Stop trying to hurt our family. The kids are scared of you now. Leave us alone." Not from Emma's phone this time. A number I didn't recognize, but the message was clearly meant to look like harassment evidence. Sarah was creating a paper trail of me receiving threatening messages that she was probably sending to herself. She was spiraling. And that made her more dangerous than ever. I got to Safeway at exactly 7 a.m. when they opened, my hands shaking as I approached the customer service counter. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Linda, listened to my explanation with the kind of patience that suggested she'd dealt with stranger requests. Security footage from last night. That's unusual. Are you police? No, but the police might be requesting it soon. I need to prove I was here between 8:45 and 9:20 p.m. There's a custody case involved. I showed her my receipt. I talked to Janet Morrison in the frozen food section. She's a regular customer, blonde hair, was talking about her new baby. Linda's expression softened slightly. Oh, Janet. Yeah, she comes in every Tuesday night after her yoga class. Sweet lady. She studied my receipt again. Look, I can't show you the footage, but I can tell you that our cameras cover every aisle with timestamps. If you were here when you say you were, it'll show. How long do you keep the recordings? 30 days. But sir, if this is for court, you'll need a subpoena or police request. I thanked Linda and called Margaret immediately. The footage exists, but we need legal channels to get it. Already on it. I'm filing an emergency motion this morning for evidence preservation. David, I also found Janet Morrison's contact information through your old company directory. She agreed to meet with us at 10 a.m. Janet remembered our conversation perfectly. Of course I remember talking to you. You helped me reach the frozen peas on the top shelf. I'm still recovering from my C-section. We talked for at least 20 minutes about sleep schedules and baby formula. You seemed completely normal, maybe a little stressed, but not like someone who'd be stalking their ex-wife. She agreed to provide a written statement, but as we finished at the coffee shop where we'd met, she asked the question I'd been dreading. David, why would someone say you were somewhere else if you weren't? I mean, what's the point? I found myself explaining the entire nightmare to this woman I barely knew, Sarah's systematic campaign, the parental alienation, Derek's involvement, the escalating false accusations. Janet listened with growing horror. That's monstrous, she said finally. Using children as weapons like that. My ex-husband and I had our problems, but we'd never. She shook her head. What can I do to help? At 1:30 p.m., Margaret called with an update that changed everything. David, the police investigated Sarah's report about you violating the restraining order. They pulled traffic cam footage from the intersection of Maple and Pine, the main route through Sarah's neighborhood. My heart stopped. And? Your Honda isn't on any of the footage from last night. But here's the interesting part, there are 3 different Honda Civics that drove through that intersection between 9 and 10 p.m. One silver, one dark blue, one black. What color did Mrs. Patterson claim she saw? She said dark colored, couldn't be sure of the exact shade in the streetlight. But David, here's the kicker, Derek Hoffman drives a dark blue Honda Civic. The pieces exploded into place. He drove his own car past the house to create the sighting, knowing Mrs. Patterson would assume it was me. It gets better. I pulled Derek's vehicle registration. His Honda Civic is a 2018, same body style as yours. In dim streetlight, they'd be nearly impossible to tell apart. They staged the entire thing. And David? The traffic cameras caught Derek's license plate at 9:24 p.m. and again at 9:46 p.m., almost exactly matching the times in Sarah's police report. For the first time in months, I felt like laughing. Sarah and Derek had been so focused on manufacturing evidence that they'd used Derek's own car to impersonate mine, never considering that traffic cameras might capture the license plates. Margaret, does this mean the restraining order violation is dropped? Better than that. It means Sarah filed a false police report, and Derek aided her in doing it. I'm requesting criminal charges against both of them. My phone rang immediately after hanging up with Margaret. Dr. Martinez. David, I just got a very interesting call from Emma's school counselor, Mrs. Peterson. She's been documenting concerning changes in Emma's behavior over the past month, and she wants to speak with you. What kind of changes? Emma's been having anxiety attacks during school, asking teachers if her daddy is coming to pick her up when you're not even scheduled for pickup. She's also been repeating very adult phrases about divorce and custody that 7-year-olds don't typically know. The school counselor wanted to meet. Sarah's fake police report was unraveling. Derek's car was caught on camera proving their deception. After 8 months of playing defense, the momentum was finally shifting. But I knew Sarah well enough to know that cornering her would make her more dangerous, not less. The meeting with Mrs. Peterson, Emma's school counselor, was scheduled for 3:30 p.m., right during normal pickup time. As I walked through the elementary school hallways covered in cheerful bulletin boards and children's artwork, I couldn't help but notice how many other parents were here for routine reasons while I was fighting just to remain part of my daughter's life. Mrs. Peterson was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who invited me into her small office decorated with motivational posters and a goldfish bowl. She pulled out a thick folder with Emma's name on it. Mr. Chen, I want to be upfront with you. I've been documenting Emma's behavioral changes since October, and I felt it was important you know what we've been observing. She opened the folder to reveal pages of handwritten notes. Emma has always been a confident, outgoing child. But starting about 6 weeks ago, she began having what I can only describe as anxiety episodes. She'll suddenly start crying and ask if you're coming to get her, even on days when Mrs. Chen is scheduled for pickup. What triggers these episodes? That's what's concerning. They seem to happen after she's been absent or late to school. I started tracking the pattern, and it correlates with Monday mornings after your weekend visits. Mrs. Peterson showed me a calendar with red marks. Every Monday following your visitation, Emma comes to school either late or extremely distressed. Last Monday, she asked me if children can choose which parent to live with when the other parent gets sick in their head. My hands clenched involuntarily. Those were Sarah's exact words from months ago. There's something else, Mr. Chen. Emma's been using very sophisticated language about legal concepts. Last week during recess, I overheard her telling another child that her daddy might have to go away because he violated court orders. No 7-year-old understands what court orders are unless an adult has been discussing legal matters in front of her. Mrs. Peterson pulled out another sheet. I also want you to see this. We had the children draw pictures of their families 2 weeks ago. She showed me Emma's drawing. It showed 3 figures labeled me, Mommy, and Derek standing in front of a house with a sun overhead. Off to the side, separated by what looked like a wall or fence, was a smaller figure labeled Daddy under dark scribbles that might have been storm clouds. Emma volunteered that Daddy lives far away now because he made bad choices, Mrs. Peterson said gently. When I asked her what kind of bad choices, she said he tries to take children away from their mommies. I stared at the drawing, my heart breaking. In Emma's mind, carefully shaped by months of psychological manipulation, I had transformed from the father who taught her to ride bikes and read bedtime stories into some kind of predator who steals children. Mrs. Peterson, I need you to know that none of what Emma's been told is true. I'm fighting for more time with my children, not trying to take them away from their mother. Mr. Chen, I've been doing this for 23 years. I can usually tell the difference between a child processing normal divorce stress and a child who's been coached. Emma's language is too precise, her fears too specific. She's repeating things she's heard, not expressing her own feelings. Mrs. Peterson leaned forward. I'm required to report suspected parental alienation to Child Protective Services when I see evidence this clear. I wanted to speak with you first because the report will be filed tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed during our conversation. A text from Margaret, David, emergency. Sarah just filed a motion claiming you've been contacting Emma's school inappropriately. She's requesting you be banned from school property. How did she know about your meeting with Mrs. Peterson? I showed Mrs. Peterson the text, watching her face change as she read it. Mr. Chen, I didn't tell Mrs. Chen about our meeting. The only way she could know. Mrs. Peterson's voice trailed off as the implication hit her. Sarah had somehow been monitoring the school's communications or had someone feeding her information about my activities there. Mrs. Peterson, how many people knew about our meeting today? Just you, me, and... Her face went pale. I left a voicemail for the principal this morning about documenting the meeting in Emma's file. But office staff sometimes listen to messages for scheduling purposes. Sarah had an ally inside Emma's school. The web of manipulation was even bigger than I'd realized. Mrs. Peterson immediately called the principal, Dr. Helen Vasquez, who arrived at the office within minutes looking visibly shaken. After hearing about Sarah's suspiciously timed motion, Dr. Vasquez pulled up the staff schedule on her computer. There are only 4 people who could have accessed my voicemails this morning, she said grimly. Myself, my secretary Mrs. Kim, the attendance clerk Mrs. Williams, and our new volunteer coordinator, Patricia Hoffman. My blood ran cold. Hoffman. As in Derek Hoffman. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. Patricia started volunteering here 6 weeks ago. She mentioned during her interview that her son was involved in family court proceedings and she wanted to help other families navigate difficult transitions. We thought it was admirable. 6 weeks ago. Right when Emma's behavioral changes started, according to Mrs. Peterson's notes. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to understand something. Patricia Hoffman is Derek Hoffman's mother. Derek is my ex-wife's boyfriend who's been directly involved in alienating my children from me. His mother has been positioned here to spy on my interactions with the school. Dr. Vasquez pulled up Patricia's volunteer application on her computer. She listed Derek Hoffman as her emergency contact. Oh my God. She's been filing reports about your involvement with Emma's education, attending PTA meetings where custody matters were discussed, even helping in Emma's classroom. Mrs. Peterson looked sick. Patricia was here last Friday when Emma had her anxiety episode. She comforted Emma, asked her lots of questions about her home life. I thought she was being helpful. What kind of questions? I asked. She asked Emma if Daddy ever made her feel scared, if Mommy seemed sad after Daddy's visits, whether Emma missed her old house before Daddy moved away. Mrs. Peterson's voice was barely a whisper. I thought she was just being nurturing. Emma opened up to her about feeling confused and worried. The setup was diabolical. Patricia had positioned herself as a trusted school volunteer, gaining access to Emma during vulnerable moments and extracting information that could be weaponized in court. Every anxiety episode, every concerning statement Emma made, every detail about our custody arrangement had been reported back to Sarah and Derek. My phone rang. Margaret again. David, we have a major problem. Sarah's emergency motion includes a supplemental report from a trained child advocate volunteer who witnessed Emma's distress at school and documented concerning statements Emma made about feeling unsafe with you. Let me guess. Patricia Hoffman. How did you? Never mind. David, this report is damning. It claims Emma told this volunteer that you ask her questions about Mommy's boyfriend, that you seem angry all the time, and that you promise to take her and Jake to live with you forever. Margaret, Patricia Hoffman is Derek's mother. She's been posing as a neutral volunteer while gathering intelligence for Sarah's legal strategy. The silence on Margaret's end stretched for several seconds. David, if we can prove that level of orchestrated deception, this goes beyond parental alienation. This is conspiracy to interfere with custody proceedings. But we need documentation. Dr. Vasquez had been listening to my side of the conversation. Mr. Chen, I can provide Patricia's volunteer application, her background check, and records of when she had access to Emma. If she's been feeding information to your ex-wife's legal team while posing as a neutral advocate, that's a serious breach of trust. There's something else, Mrs. Peterson added quietly. Patricia suggested that I document Emma's behavioral issues in more detail because they might be relevant for family court. I thought she was trying to help Emma, but she was coaching me to create evidence. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your daughter knows the truth about what kind of father you really are. Stop trying to manipulate everyone around her. I showed the text to Dr. Vasquez and Mrs. Peterson. Mrs. Peterson immediately recognized the number. That's Patricia's cell phone. She gave it to me last week in case I needed to reach her about Emma. Sarah's network of manipulation included Derek feeding her legal intelligence, his mother infiltrating Emma's school as a spy, and a coordinated campaign to manufacture evidence of my instability through people who were supposed to be protecting my daughter's well-being. But they'd finally made a mistake that couldn't be covered up. Patricia Hoffman had just sent me a threatening text from a phone number that could be traced directly back to her volunteer application at Emma's school. Dr. Vasquez immediately called an emergency meeting with the school district's legal counsel while Mrs. Peterson began printing every document related to Patricia Hoffman's involvement with Emma. I sat in the principal's office watching them work, my mind racing through the implications of what we'd uncovered. Patricia hadn't just been gathering intelligence, she'd been actively shaping the narrative about my relationship with Emma. Every concerning behavior report, every documentation of Emma's anxiety, every observation about my inappropriate involvement with the school had been filtered through Derek's mother posing as a neutral advocate. My phone rang. Dr. Martinez. David, I just received a very strange call from someone claiming to be a school volunteer. She said she was conducting a welfare check on Emma Chen and wanted to know if you'd ever been treated for anger management issues. Patricia Hoffman. She's Derek's mother, and she's been embedded at Emma's school for 6 weeks gathering information. David, she knew details about our sessions that aren't in any public record. She mentioned your discussions about parental alienation, even referenced specific therapeutic terminology I've used in my notes. The blood drained from my face. Dar. Martinez, are you saying someone accessed your confidential files? Not accessed, but Patricia asked very specific leading questions that suggest someone coached her on what to ask. She wanted to know if I diagnosed you with oppositional defiant disorder toward authority figures and whether I recommended intensive anger management therapy. Those weren't random therapeutic terms. Someone had researched exactly what kind of diagnoses would support Sarah's claims about my mental instability and coached Patricia to fish for confirmation. Dr. Vasquez hung up from her call with the district lawyer and turned to me with a grim expression. Mr. Chen, our legal counsel wants to review every interaction Patricia Hoffman has had with students and staff. If she's been gathering information under false pretenses, the district could face liability issues. What does that mean for Emma? It means Patricia's volunteer status is revoked immediately, and any reports she filed about students will be flagged as potentially compromised. Dr. Vasquez pulled up Patricia's volunteer schedule on her computer. She's been in Emma's classroom every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. She also attended 3 PTA meetings where custody arrangements for various families were discussed. Mrs. Peterson looked up from her filing. Dr. Vasquez, Patricia volunteered to help with our annual parent-teacher conferences next week. She would have had access to confidential academic records and family situation summaries for dozens of children. The scope of Patricia's infiltration was staggering. She hadn't just targeted my family, she positioned herself to gather sensitive information about multiple families going through custody disputes. My phone buzzed with another text from Patricia's number. Emma deserves better than a father who harasses school volunteers. This behavior proves everything Sarah has said about you. I screenshot the message and showed it to Dr. Vasquez. She's still trying to create evidence of harassment even after being exposed. Margaret called back with an update that made my stomach drop. David, Judge Walsh moved up tomorrow's hearing to 8 a.m. She wants to address Sarah's emergency motion about you being banned from school property before the custody evaluation. Margaret, we have proof that Derek's mother has been posing as a neutral school volunteer while feeding information to Sarah's legal team. We have documented evidence of a conspiracy. I know, and I'm preparing to present it all. But David, there's something else. Sarah's attorney just filed a supplemental motion claiming you're now harassing elderly volunteers and that your behavior is escalating dangerously. They're spinning Patricia's exposure as me targeting innocent school volunteers. Exactly. Sarah's painting this as you becoming increasingly paranoid and aggressive, now directing your anger at anyone who questions your fitness as a parent. Dr. Vasquez interrupted my call. Mr. Chen, our district security coordinator wants to speak with you. We've discovered something troubling about Patricia Hoffman's background check. She led me to another office where a serious-looking man in his 50s introduced himself as Tom Bradley, district security coordinator. Mr. Chen, when we re-examined Patricia Hoffman's volunteer application, we found discrepancies. She listed previous volunteer experience at Roosevelt Elementary in Portland, but when we called to verify, they have no record of anyone by that name ever volunteering there. She falsified her application. It appears so. She also listed a reference from a Dr. Sandra Mills, supposedly a child psychologist in Portland. We called the number, it's been disconnected for 6 months. Tom Bradley pulled out Patricia's application. There's something else. The emergency contact she listed is Derek Hoffman, but the address she provided for herself doesn't exist. We sent a verification letter there last week and it was returned as undeliverable. Patricia Hoffman had created an entirely false identity to infiltrate Emma's school. She wasn't just Derek's mother gathering information, she was a complete fabrication designed specifically to manufacture evidence against me. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, a woman's voice I'd never heard before spoke my name. David Chin. This is Detective Rebecca Martinez with Portland Police. I think we need to talk. The name Detective Rebecca Martinez hit me like ice water, the same name as my therapist, Dr. Rebecca Martinez. For a moment I wondered if I was having some kind of breakdown where reality was blending together. Detective Martinez, I'm sorry, did you say Portland Police? That's correct, Mr. Chin. I'm calling about Patricia and Hoffman. We've been investigating her for identity theft and fraud targeting families involved in custody disputes. Your name came up in our investigation. I sank into the chair in Tom Bradley's office, my head spinning. She's done this before. Mr. Chen, Patricia Hoffman has operated under at least 4 different identities over the past 2 years. She targets divorced fathers, embeds herself in their children's schools or activities, then manufactures evidence of concerning behavior that gets used in family court. The security coordinator, Tom Bradley, was leaning forward listening to my side of the conversation. I put the call on speaker with Detective Martinez's permission. Detective, this is Tom Bradley with the school district. We just discovered that Patricia falsified her entire volunteer application here. How many other schools has she infiltrated? In Portland alone, she's done this at 7 elementary schools and 3 daycare centers. We've identified at least 12 fathers who lost custody partially based on evidence she manufactured while posing as a neutral child advocate. My vision started to blur around the edges. This wasn't just about Sarah's manipulation anymore. I was dealing with someone who ran a systematic operation designed to destroy fathers' relationships with their children. Detective Martinez, how did you connect her to my case? 2 days ago, a father in Portland named James Rivera called our fraud unit. He lost custody of his 6-year-old daughter last month after a school volunteer documented concerning behavior. When he saw Patricia Hoffman's photo in a news article about volunteer appreciation at your daughter's school, he recognized her as the woman who'd been gathering information about his family. Tom Bradley pulled up the school's website on his computer and found the article Detective Martinez mentioned. There was Patricia, smiling next to Emma's teacher, Mrs. Johnson, with the caption, "Volunteer Patricia Hoffman has been instrumental in supporting our students through difficult family transitions. Mr. Chen, we need you to come to Portland tomorrow to provide a statement." Based on what we've documented, Patricia Hoffman could be charged with conspiracy, identity theft, and interference with custody proceedings. But we need victims to come forward. Detective, I have a crucial court hearing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. that could determine whether I lose my children forever. Can this wait until afternoon? Actually, Mr. Chen, our investigation might help your custody case. We've documented Patricia's pattern of creating false evidence in family court proceedings. Our fraud detective, Michelle Torres, specializes in testifying about manufactured evidence in custody cases. Margaret had been right about Sarah getting desperate, but neither of us had imagined the scope of what we were dealing with. Derek hadn't just connected Sarah with legal strategies, he'd connected her with someone who ran a professional operation designed to destroy fathers through the family court system. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma's number. "Daddy, Derek's mom says you're going to jail and we'll never see you again." Is that true? Patricia was still using Emma as a weapon even after being exposed. But this time, she'd made a critical error. Detective Martinez was listening when I read the text aloud. "Mr. Chen, Patricia just violated a restraining order we issued against her yesterday. She's prohibited from any contact with families involved in our investigation. Can you forward that text to me immediately?" As I sent the screenshot to Detective Martinez, Tom Bradley's computer chimed with an urgent email from the district superintendent. "Emergency, all Patricia Hoffman volunteer activities suspended immediately. FBI requesting access to school communication systems. Contact legal counsel before discussing with media." FBI. This had escalated far beyond a custody dispute. Patricia Hoffman wasn't just Derek's mother helping Sarah manipulate the system. She was part of an organized criminal enterprise that specialized in weaponizing family courts against fathers. And tomorrow morning, Detective Michelle Torres would be sitting in Judge Walsh's courtroom with documented evidence of how they operated. For the first time in 8 months, I felt like I might actually have a chance. Detective Torres arrived at the courthouse at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before my hearing, carrying a briefcase that I hoped contained 8 months' worth of vindication. She was a compact woman in her 40s with the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd seen every variation of human deception. "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your case file along with 11 others involving Patricia Hoffman. The pattern is identical: infiltrate the child's environment, manufacture evidence of paternal instability, then disappear once custody is transferred. Margaret spread Detective Torres's report across the defense table. This is extraordinary, Detective. Patricia operated under the name Patricia Mills in Seattle, Patricia Anderson in Tacoma, Patricia Stevens in Spokane. Always targeting recently divorced fathers. What we discovered is that Derek Hoffman has been recruiting his mother to assist other women in custody battles. They charge between $15,000 and $25,000 for what they call comprehensive family advocacy services. My stomach lurched. Sarah paid them to destroy me. According to bank records we subpoenaed, Sarah Chin paid Derek Hoffman $18,500 in 3 installments over the past 2 months. The payments were listed as legal consulting services. Judge Walsh entered the courtroom at exactly 8 a.m., and I watched Sarah's face change when she saw Detective Torres at our table. Sarah whispered frantically to her attorney, Mr. Brennan, who looked increasingly pale as Margaret handed him copies of the fraud investigation documents. Your Honor, Margaret began, before we address the emergency motion about school property access, we need to present evidence of systematic fraud perpetrated against my client and his children. Mr. Brennan shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This appears to be a desperate attempt to deflect attention from Mr. Chen's escalating harassment of school personnel. Judge Walsh studied the police report Margaret had submitted. Detective Torres, you're alleging that organized fraud has occurred in my courtroom? Yes, Your Honor. Patricia Hoffman, operating under a false identity, infiltrated the child's school to manufacture evidence for these proceedings. She's done this in at least 12 other custody cases across 3 states. Sarah's attorney requested a 15-minute recess, during which I watched Sarah and Derek through the courtroom window having what appeared to be a heated argument in the hallway. Derek kept gesturing toward the parking garage, like he wanted to leave. When court resumed, Mr. Brennan's strategy had completely changed. Your Honor, my client was unaware of any fraudulent activity by volunteers at her daughter's school. Mrs. Chen simply paid Mr. Hoffman for legitimate legal research services. Detective Torres opened her briefcase. Your Honor, we have recorded phone calls between Derek Hoffman and his mother discussing specific strategies for documenting Mr. Chen's behavior at school events. We also have text messages where Patricia refers to Emma Chen as the target child and discusses which teachers would be most likely to believe concerning reports about the father. Judge Walsh's expression darkened as she reviewed the transcripts. Detective, are you telling me that evidence presented to this court was deliberately fabricated? Yes, Your Honor. Including the report from Patricia posing as a child advocate volunteer that was submitted yesterday in the emergency motion. I watched Sarah's face crumble as the scope of her scheme unraveled in open court. But then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She smiled. Your Honor, Sarah said, standing without her attorney's permission, I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights and request immediate protective custody for my children. David has clearly become dangerous, and now he's manipulating police investigations to target innocent volunteers. Even caught red-handed, Sarah was trying to twist the exposure of her fraud into evidence of my instability. Judge Walsh stared at Sarah for a long moment before speaking. Mrs. Chen, sit down. Detective Torres, I'm scheduling an emergency investigation hearing for this afternoon at 2 p.m. Until then, all current custody arrangements are suspended pending resolution of these fraud allegations. My children were about to be placed in temporary state custody because Sarah would rather destroy our entire family than admit what she'd done. The emergency investigation hearing at 2 p.m. felt like the longest 4 hours of my life. Emma and Jake had been placed with my sister Linda as temporary guardians while Detective Torres presented her complete findings to Judge Walsh, a child advocate, and a court-appointed psychiatrist. Dr. Rebecca Martinez testified about the systematic psychological manipulation she documented. Detective Torres presented evidence of Derek and Patricia's criminal enterprise. Margaret methodically dismantled every false accusation Sarah had made over the past 8 months. But the moment that changed everything came when Judge Walsh asked to speak privately with Emma and Jake. Your Honor, the child advocate said after meeting with my children, both children expressed confusion about statements they've been coached to make. Emma specifically said, Derek's grandma taught me what to say about Daddy, but I don't think Daddy is scary. Jake asked if he's allowed to love his father again. Sarah's attorney had stopped objecting an hour earlier. Sarah herself sat in stunned silence as her carefully constructed narrative collapsed under the weight of documented evidence. Judge Walsh returned to the bench at 6:47 p.m. with a ruling that felt like waking up from a nightmare. This court finds that Mrs. Sarah Chen, in collaboration with Derek Hoffman and Patricia Hoffman, engaged in systematic fraud, perjury, and parental alienation designed to manipulate these proceedings. The evidence of coaching, false identity infiltration, and manufactured documentation represents one of the most egregious cases of custody interference this court has encountered. She turned to Sarah directly. Mrs. Chen, you will undergo immediate psychological evaluation and supervised visitation pending completion of intensive reunification therapy. Mr. Derek Hoffman is prohibited from any contact with the minor children. Then Judge Walsh looked at me. Mr. Chen, I'm awarding you primary physical custody effective immediately, with Mrs. Chen granted supervised visits twice weekly until she completes court-mandated therapy and demonstrates that she can prioritize her children's well-being over her desire for revenge. Detective Torres informed me after the hearing that Sarah faced potential felony charges for filing false police reports and conspiracy to commit fraud. Derek and Patricia were arrested that evening on charges related to their systematic targeting of fathers in custody disputes. 3 weeks later, Emma ran into my arms after her first therapy session designed to help her process the confusion and manipulation she'd experienced. Daddy, she said, her 7-year-old voice serious and thoughtful, Dr. Peterson says it's okay to love both you and Mommy, and that I never have to choose sides or keep secrets. Jake, now 6, took longer to warm up again, but yesterday he fell asleep on my couch during movie night, his small hand holding mine just like he used to before Sarah's campaign of lies nearly destroyed our relationship forever. Sarah completed her psychological evaluation last month. The court-appointed psychiatrist diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder and recommended 18 months of intensive therapy before unsupervised visitation could be considered. She's attending sessions twice weekly now, and her supervised visits with Emma and Jake are gradually improving. The therapist who finally believed me, Dr. Rebecca Martinez continues working with all of us, separately and together, to rebuild the trust and security that systematic manipulation had destroyed. My ex-wife spread rumors I was crazy, turned my children against me, and nearly succeeded in erasing me from their lives entirely. But the truth has a way of surfacing when people dig deep enough to find it. Emma and Jake are home with me now, learning that love doesn't require choosing sides, that family relationships don't have to be weapons, and that their father fought for them every single day, even when the whole world seemed convinced he was the problem. Some battles are worth every scar it takes to win them.